Hi, and welcome to Chatting with Chuck. This is Chuck. Welcome to our next episode. Today I have a special guest. I have Mike Varian here from B+B Smartworx. He's here for an Advantech channel sales meeting. He flew into town and I grabbed him for a few minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about B+B Smartworx. First thing, Mike, tell us about B+B Smartworx and the relationship it has with Advantech.
Sure, Chuck. So B+B Smartworx was founded in 1981, and we were originally named B+B Electronics. It went through a branding change a few years back. But we've always been a manufacturer, product company designing and manufacturing communications equipment for the machine-to-machine world. And we've been a partner of Advantech for quite some time, probably touching on 10 years or so. And then in January of 2016, we were actually acquired by Advantech. So now B+B and the entire B+B product portfolio is part of the Advantech family.
That's great. Mike, I was looking at your title and I see it's VP of IoT Technologies. So IoT must be an important topic for you. What is B+B Smartworx doing with IoT right now?
Yeah, it's a really interesting area, and in part I think every company needs somebody with IoT in their title because it is quite an emerging space. But it's tricky to differentiate between what's the marketing hype around IoT and what's the reality of IoT. So I would say from B+B's perspective, we'd always been in device communications, machine-to-machine communications, in automation and utilities and transportation, point of sale, critical transaction type management. And we started seeing a shift. I would say back around 2010 or so, we started at least observing a shift in the type of communications we were having with some of our customers. So in the past, it was always about connecting one type of equipment to another, putting together a transaction management system, maybe for a convenience store, putting together communications, helping devices talk to each other in an electrical utility, oil and gas, factory floor automation, for example. But that we started having a new kind of conversation that was starting to reoccur a lot more frequently. And it was a lot more about how do we connect these devices, these assets that we have in our OT world, in this operations technology world. But now we want to get data from those devices up into some sort of enterprise application. So that started, that was probably we had barely heard of the term IoT yet, but we were starting to really recognizing that we're on the front end of a IT-OT type convergence. And I think that's probably the most pragmatic way to describe what's being termed as the Internet of Things today, especially in the industrial world.
Well, Mike, IoT is, you do hear it a lot, and there's been a lot of talk about IoT. But for some people in the automation industry, it doesn't look like anything new. Can you explain the difference between IoT and automation or SCADA?
Absolutely. So we get this a lot, and it's completely understandable because if you've been in the automation or SCADA industry, we've been doing stuff like this since the 1970s in terms of putting together remote management and displays of automation systems and things. But if you look at it, it's a little bit more, it's an evolution of technologies, and it's a mix of introducing what's rapidly emerged in the IT side of the world into what we've been doing for years in OT and automation. So it's a little bit different approach, and it generally lends itself to a lot more scalability, for one thing. So, for example, to add a little color to that, if you were quoting a SCADA system, this could be this year, it could have been 10 years ago, it could have been in 1985. You're quoting that SCADA system, you pretty much want to know a handful of things. How many endpoints are we managing? How many touch points do we want to have? How many HMIs are going to be out there? And you would design a system around that, and you could bid knowing that information and then build out a system. But then if somebody came to you 6 years later, 10 years later and said, I'd like to add 40 new display points, I'd like all my staff to be able to see this data on their mobile phones, you were pretty much at a kind of a do-over situation. You said, boy, that's what we installed the first time was very much a closed system, very well defined and structured on the front end, not that easy to expand, and certainly not that easy to add these entire additional dimensions to. By applying some IT type technologies to the picture, one thing what we're doing now, anytime we want to connect an asset into an application, we want to create a disconnect there. We want to have an intermediary such that we're never making assets and applications directly tied to each other. What we want to do is get the data from that asset, turn that into meaningful data that can be used by many applications. So today you might have a vision and an application and business need for the first application. Maybe it's to meet some compliance requirements in your plant. But maybe that same sensor information or asset information a year from now is going to be interesting to another person in your division that says they're responsible for managing energy in your plant, and they could use some of that sensor data as well. And maybe another year later, that same information might have some application or purpose to the person responsible for security, for example. So what we don't want to do is build point-in-time solutions to point-in-time problems. We want something to be totally scalable. So it's a bit of a nuance. So we're using a lot of OT technologies, but we're mixing in things that happen in the IT world in terms of device management, device deployment, the types of protocols, and then the end applications or solutions that we want to be able to integrate with.
Great, Mike. Someone listening to this might be going, oh, that sounds great, but, how do I get started on this? And I've heard you have a new starter kit for the IoT. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so what we've learned, so about almost 2 years ago we launched a wireless sensing platform that was very much designed around IoT. So the whole idea was using a battery-powered mesh network, we could go out and attach to just about any sensor without disrupting any existing application in terms of its control system and things. And we could grab that sensor data, we could convert it into semantically useful information, so it's no longer just, say, a Modbus register. It's now saying that the level in the tank is 32 meters. Or the temperature of the process is 300 degrees C, things like that, and transmit that information up over what was at the time an emerging protocol, which is now a dominant protocol called MQTT. What we found with that is, we always viewed our role was in the hardware side of things. So we made intelligent hardware that made it as easy as possible to get that data up to an application layer. The challenge we ran into is most of the customers we engaged with didn't yet have a application solution in mind. They had their SCADA application, perhaps. Maybe they had an ERP system, but they wanted to do a proof of concept and didn't want to have to spend a bunch of money on software integration and things like that. So we came out with a next generation gateway that gave us the power to put an application layer right in the gateway box itself. So with that, we're able to put together a little application bundle that includes the sensors themselves, one wireless sensing node that's an IP67 outdoor rated rugged battery powered sensing node, and the gateway, which bridges that over to IP communications. And in the gateway it actually runs an application. So the gateway itself has a web server that has the data visualization. You can very quickly set it up to do text message and email alarms and alerts. So if that if that current sensor ever reads over 50 amps, you say, boy, that's a fault condition. Or maybe if it ever goes below 2 amps, that maybe that's a fault condition because that machine's not supposed to shut down. So you could send yourself text messages and alerts, email alerts. You can store data and publish it up to like your Dropbox account. So the whole idea is it's kind of an IoT solution totally contained in a box. So a customer can deploy a proof of concept system in literally minutes, certainly not days and definitely not weeks. So that was the idea of the starter kit, is helping make it easy for people to get through their proof of concept phase, because so many people were struggling with the software integration side of it just to prove out their business case.
Mike, it sounds like a great tool to get started with. I'm assuming you can find this on your website if they have more questions about it. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So it's out there on the website today. It's on Advantech.com and on the Advantech-bb.com as well. And we tried to make this very affordable with the idea that a lot of the people that have the ideas, they know where the challenges are, they know where the waste is in their company, they know where there's opportunities for improvement, but the difficulty is in measuring and getting data to prove that out. And a lot of those people, it's the frontline engineers and managers, and they have discretionary spending capability. If this is going to be a $10,000 project, that's going to have to be something they're going to have to run up the food chain and get multiple layers of approval. We're very careful to keep the pricing of these kits under $1,000 so that it's within the discretionary spend capability of a lot of the people that really know how to apply these solutions today.
Great. Mike, thank you for taking the time. I pulled you out of your meetings today, so I'm going to let you go. Once again, thank you for listening to Chatting with Chuck, and stay tuned for additional episodes. Thanks.